Variety. He says the network rolled the dice when they hired the controversial comedian in the first place. He joins us live. Brian, nice to talk to you.
Hi, Shep. How are you?
I'm well. Does your reporting indicate there were discussions of this at the highest level prior to rebooting this show, or is it something they just realized and went ahead with?
You know, I think her reputation preceded her, so I think it wasn't an unknown factor. But I think they saw, look, reboots are a hot concept right now. You're seeing Will and Grace, Murphy Brown, a lot of older shows are being rebooted on broadcast TV, and I think they saw an opportunity here.
Is there anything about this moment, this cancellation, and this star that tells us anything about the bigger picture right now in our country?
Well, I think, look, there's no secret where the nation is polarized, and that boils down not only to politics, but cultural issues. I think when celebrities who are in the middle of hot properties talk about race or class, it can be a dicey prospect, and she was doing that.
I guess what I'm asking, Brian, is did ABC make a decision that we can't be associated with a racist because we can't be associated with a racist, or because the money was such, despite all the money coming in, but the money was such for this global company and its identity that the money was such long-term that it couldn't handle it financially?
Well, I mean, this was a hot prospect coming into this season. It was probably one of their best-ranked shows during their upfront. It was the talk of the upfront when they made the presentation. I think they were counting on a lot of money coming in from this show, and they're probably cutting off the show despite what they thought might have been the promise of big money coming in.
Well, in the past, we've seen companies react to the loss of money by
There are a couple of factors going in here. They may have seen the ratings for Roseanne, which spiked heavily upon the first 2 weeks, coming back down to earth in the latter part of the recent season's run. They may have seen, a negotiation for new seasons that they had to pay a lot more money for the cast, who are, arguably a pretty stellar group of actors who may have seen, new leverage and new popularity of the program. There may have been some costs that ABC saw, but they said, you know what, we don't need this.
Yeah, it sounds like that may be exactly what's happened. It's nice to talk to you. Brian Steinberg, the senior TV editor for Variety. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
And I mentioned just a short time ago that her agency has dropped her. I have a quote from her agency now from ICM Partners, which has dropped Roseanne Barr. I'm quoting, "We are all greatly distressed by the disgraceful and unacceptable tweet from Roseanne Barr this morning. What she wrote is antithetical to our core values, both as individuals and as a company." And it went on, "Consequently, we have notified her that we will not represent her. Effective immediately, Roseanne Barr is no longer a client." Moving on to other news now, more than 4,600 people likely died as a result of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico last year. The government told us 64 people died. According to a new study from Harvard University, it criticized Puerto Rico's counting methods and claimed there was a lack of transparency in those counting methods. Researchers say they got their number by comparing the death rate after Maria to the death rate in 2016. There was a 62% increase. That report found that many of the deaths were the result of a delay in medical care and a lack of basic services, including running water and electricity. Puerto Rican officials say they expected the number would indeed go up, and they, quote, "look forward to analyzing the survey." Police say they have found the body of a man who went missing while trying to help a woman and her cat during the epic flooding that happened in Maryland. Searchers found Edison Herman in a nearby river. Floodwaters swept him away on Sunday in Ellicott City, we're told, just west of Baltimore. He was a National Guard member and an Air Force veteran. We're also getting a closer look at some of the damage to the historic town's Main Street. Look at this. Some of the businesses just getting back to normal after catastrophic flooding 2 years ago. And look at this. Here's that street and what it looked like on Sunday night. That is a river coming down the street, tearing into homes and businesses. The county executive there said this time around is much worse than the 2016 flooding. Garrett Tenney is live there for us this afternoon. Garrett?
Well, Shep, one bit of good news we've gotten today is that police say they have not received any additional reports of anyone being missing, so they're feeling much more optimistic now that there won't be any additional fatalities as a result of this storm. And that was a real concern because the flooding that hit this area in 2016, that killed 2 people. And as you mentioned, the damage from this storm was significantly worse. Now, the business owners are just getting their first look at the damage today, getting to come back in, and they're finding thick mud across the main street, across the floors of their businesses. Walls of several buildings are completely gone. I just spoke to the fire department, and they told me they are done inspecting these buildings. Several of them, though, are simply not structurally sound enough that they're going to allow people or even first responders back in. They're going to need to come in, stabilize those buildings before anyone can come in and do further damage assessments and recover any of their belongings that may still be there. Now, a lot of folks, though, they are planning to rebuild. And this is after doing that very same thing less than 2 years ago when this previous flooding hit. Others, though, that we've spoken to have said after just going through this very same experience, they're not so sure they're going to be able to do it again. Now, county officials have also told us following that 2016 flooding that they came up with plans to build some additional storm retention ponds as well as some additional piping to prevent a flooding like this from happening again. The funding for those projects, though, didn't come through until just before this last week. Shep?
Garrett Tenney, Ellicott City in Maryland. New signs now that the meeting between President Trump and the North Korean dictator might happen. We'll see what happens. Our next guest says there's still not a single thing to suggest that the 2 men will ever see eye to eye. In other words, we have one definition of denuclearization, and the man on the right has a completely different one. I'll tell you those. Plus, a father accused of playing Pokemon Go while his son dangled from a balcony. Have you seen this? The dad's facing charges. And the man who scaled a building to save the boy getting lots of love, as Fox reports this hour. Up next, bottom of the hour, top of the news.
I'm Leah Gabriel with the Fox Report now. Crews rescuing 3 climbers in Oregon after they fell about 300 feet on Mount Hood. A helicopter airlifting one of them to a hospital with back and shoulder injuries. 2 others also hurt. The rescue leader told reporters that the mountain conditions were difficult and slippery. Meantime, the U.S. Embassy in Nicaragua's capital shutting down today ahead of planned protests. The State Department reminding Americans there that the country has laws against foreigners participating in demonstrations. Dozens of people have died recently in Nicaragua as the result of violence between anti-government protesters and police. And another search for wreckage from Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 coming to an end. The CEO of the U.S. company leading the hunt said that he was disappointed they did not find anything. MH370 vanished in 2014 with 239 people on board. Searchers have found only a few pieces of debris from that plane. The news continues with Shep right after this.
Topping the news at the bottom of the hour, the first family in China. Beijing has granted the president's daughter and advisor, Ivanka Trump, more than a dozen trademarks in just 3 months. During that same time, the Chinese government has been in the middle of trade talks with her father's administration, and as the president is defying both Democrats and Republicans to ease penalties against Chinese telecom company ZTE. The Associated Press reports the Chinese stamp of approval on Ivanka Trump's brands will let her company market a variety of products in China and will probably make her many millions. Earlier this month, President Trump announced he will help the Chinese President Xi Jinping keep ZTE in business, despite the fact that U.S. officials have banned American companies from selling parts to ZTE, saying the company violated a settlement deal after getting around U.S. penalties on Iran and North Korea. They've said, the cybersecurity officials, that the company's technology is a major security threat in the United States. Just this month, the Pentagon banned ZTE phones from U.S. military bases, saying China could use them to spy on American troops. The Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, has said helping ZTE would not protect America's economic or national security. The Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida says there is support from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to block a White House proposal that could help save the telecom company. Meantime, the White House today threatening again to slap $50 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese products. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, said the trade war with China was on hold while officials from both countries tried to negotiate a deal. Rich Edson is live at the State Department. Chinese officials say they were surprised with the White House announcement.
Yeah, Shep, they say that the announcement from the White House was unexpected, but they say that they have the ability to safeguard their core interests in all of this. The White House says it's going to subject $50 billion in Chinese goods coming to the United States to a 25% tariff. It adds that it's going to target industrially significant technology, and it's going to announce the full list on June 15th. A couple of weeks after that, the administration says it will announce a policy to restrict Chinese investments in U.S. technology and technology companies. That coming a couple of weeks after this full list of $50 billion comes out from the administration. There have been long concerns from this administration and previous administrations about Chinese companies acquiring American technology, stealing American technology, on top of the $375 billion trade deficit the U.S. already has with China. And this is just a few days before the Secretary of the Commerce Department, Wilbur Ross, is scheduled to head to Beijing for more discussions on this, Shep.
And in the wake of all of this, I'm told, though I don't know why I would care at all about this, that ZTE is shaking up its management.
It is, and remember, this is part of the deal with the president. The president announced that ZTE would have to shake up its management, change its management structure, and also pay a $1.3 billion fine if it wanted to operate with U.S. businesses again. But there's opposition to that, of course. You mentioned that, coming from both sides of the aisle. The security concerns that a number of folks, Democrat and Republicans, have in Congress about Chinese equipment like this. And also, on top of that, the company has lost, according to analysts, billions of dollars perhaps because of this ban as that continues. So there's concerns on the one hand from Congress on this, and on the other hand, already ZTE because of this episode, Shep.
Rich Edson, thanks very much. Of course, the president said during the transition that there would be no new deals from anyone involved with Trump companies in foreign countries during his term in office. Instead, Ivanka Trump has gotten all of these patents. President Trump accusing the special counsel and his team of a whole new set of conspiracy theories, unfounded, not based in fact or reason, with no evidence to support them. The president says, back up. The president says that Robert Mueller and his team are meddling in the midterms. There's nothing to support that claim, and neither the president nor the White House has offered anything to support that claim. Yet here's the tweet. The 13 angry Democrats, plus people who worked 8 years for Obama, working on the rigged Russia witch hunt, will be meddling with the midterm elections, especially now that Republicans, stay tough, are taking the lead in the polls. There was no collusion except by the Democrats. That was the tweet. The president claims the special counsel investigating Russia election interference and potential collusion with Team Trump will be meddling in our elections. There is nothing to indicate that's true. As for the rest of the tweet, documents show there are people who've registered as Democrats on the special counsel's team, but Robert Mueller is a Republican, and so is President Trump's Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who appointed Mueller, an appointment many top Republicans praised. And the so-called rigged Russia witch hunt is not a witch hunt. It has resulted in charges against 4 former Trump associates. 3 pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about Russia. President Trump has also claimed the feds spied on his campaign with an informant. The president calls it Spygate. Fox News can confirm it is not. Fox News knows of no evidence to support the president's claim that lawmakers from both parties say using an informant to investigate suspected ties to Russia is not spying. It's part of the normal investigative process. Let's turn to Jordan Fabian now, the White House correspondent for The Hill. He had a busy morning.
To say the least.
But yet, you know, you laugh at them because there's almost nothing else you can do. It's hard. These are official statements from the White House. I know this because the White House has informed us that tweets are official statements from the White House. Rarely have we seen so many untrue official statements from the White House in the past. In fact, in my lifetime, I can't remember this ever happening before. Can you?
No, it's a pretty extraordinary attack we're seeing by President Trump on the special counsel investigation. And what he's trying to do here is muddy the waters and really undermine the credibility of Robert Mueller and his team. as they continue this investigation. It's moving in closer to the president's inner circle. He's clearly feeling the pressure, and this is how he's responding.
A journalist, Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes and CBS News, is said to have asked President Trump about this very matter. And Leslie Stahl has told us what the president said about his attempts to discredit. And what was that?
Well, she said that essentially he will put things out there to muddy the waters, to create confusion, and to make the media look bad. The news media obviously reporting on a lot of these developments in the Russia investigation. And if President Trump supporters don't believe what the media is saying, then maybe Republican lawmakers won't believe it either if they have to perhaps take up impeachment proceedings that are initiated by any findings from the Mueller investigation. So this is an all fronts battle on this issue by the president. And
the president's TV attorney, Rudy Giuliani, the former New York mayor, has made similar admissions about strategy on behalf of the Trump group.
That's right. Just this Sunday, he went on CNN and was talking about the strategy behind these attacks. And he said, look, this is about winning the war of public opinion. And I'm paraphrasing here, in case of impeachment proceedings. So whether or not what the president is saying is true seems secondary to the political aim of the president and his legal team, which is to undermine this investigation and raise doubts about Robert Mueller.
Discussions of impeachment, which the Democratic hierarchy is guarding against and warning its own people not to talk about. But these discussions of impeachment, Team Trump seem to believe benefit them.
That's right. And it's interesting that you hear this word meddling in elections being brought up. And that's exactly the case. The president and his allies believe that if the Democrats are talking about impeachment, that's a positive for them because they think it's such a far-fetched, ridiculous thing to happen to the president. They'd rather Democrats maybe talk about that instead of some of the issues, the policy issues at hand in this election. So you're going to see the president continue to highlight those issues at every chance he can get.
Jordan Fabian is the White House correspondent for The Hill and can be found at their website and has his own Twitter. Jordan, it's nice for you to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Shep.
Ahead, new back and forth on the North Korea summit, not summit, summit. Right now, officially not a summit, not going to happen officially. And yet, as North Korea sends a very high-profile visitor to the United States, there is discussion of a summit on June 13th. That's next. Quarter till the hour now. President Trump wants a summit with Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un wants a summit with President Trump. Officially, though, the summit is canceled. That said, North Korea's former spy chief is heading to New York. And the president is talking like the summit will actually happen. But we'll see what happens. A State Department spokeswoman said minutes ago that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is going to New York tomorrow and will meet with that North Korean official, Kim Young-chol. Reporters spotted Kim at the airport in Beijing earlier today. If it all happens, he'll be the highest-ranking North Korean official to visit the United States in nearly 2 decades. Last week, President Trump announced he is pulling out of the June 12th summit. I said June 13th. I meant June 12th. Sorry. He accused North Korea of showing open hostility. Sent him a letter, remember? Now, President Trump is signaling that the letter worked and the summit is back on, but that's not official. Today, the president tweeted, "We have put a great team together for our talks with North Korea. Meetings are currently taking place concerning summit and more. Kim Young-chol, the vice chairman of North Korea, heading now to New York. Solid response to my letter. Thank you." Let's bring in Tara Mahler. She's a former CIA military analyst, now spokesperson and senior policy advisor for the Counter-Extremism Project. Good to see you, Tara. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The man who's coming to meet with the Secretary of State is a major player. South Korea says he's the mastermind of the sinking of a South Korean warship that killed 46 sailors. And the mastermind of the shelling of an island which killed both soldiers and civilians. He's even blacklisted by both the United States and South Korea. He wields a lot of power, right?
He wields a lot of power, and I think this shows that for a summit that was canceled with a letter from the president last week, the summit's not officially canceled. There's 3 parallel tracks going on right now, one in New York with this visit and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo traveling to New York. You have officials meeting over in Singapore from the U.S. side, laying the groundwork for the potential June 12th summit. And you also have a 3rd track going on right now, I think also in the DMZ with officials working out some things. So for a canceled summit, there are lots of preparations underway to try to make it happen. We'll see. We'll see what happens, as the president likes to say. I think they were leaving the door open in case the North Koreans pulled out. They wanted to have, the United States not being on the defensive, and they don't want to hold a meeting that's going to yield a negative outcome. There needs to be some zones of agreement about what's going to happen in this meeting and the outcome it's going to yield.
Well, normally that sort of thing is worked out before a summit, and the summit is just kind of the show. Like the diplomats have gone through it all, fine-tooth comb, make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed, both sides agree on every single thing, and then they have a summit.
You're exactly right. What's going to need to happen is they're going to need to get things in order rather quickly. There's not a lot of time here. I think that while I'm all for the summit, they sort of rushed this. There was that impromptu press conference where they announced it, then the June 12th date was announced, and you're